Playing zombies is a rewarding experience filled with dopamine rushes and close calls with a horde of zombies. The mode started off so simple. It could have stayed that way forever and likely faded away. Easter eggs began to pop up that weren't what general gamers call Easter eggs. These ended up being more like quests in the map more than small hidden Easter eggs that the name originally meant. While we still refer to these as Easter eggs today, they have become so much more than that. So for the remainder of this video, know that when I'm talking Easter eggs, I am specifically referring to the map's main quest. The zombies mode began to evolve and get more complicated. When that happens, there needs to be a clear vision of how that complexity needs to operate so that it remains clear. This clear vision is apparent in many aspects of the game, but we are going to focus on one part of it today, and I haven't seen this talked about. This concept usually relates more to a necessary part of storytelling than it does to gaming, but it does apply well in this case. The one thing that is consistent in great zombies Easter eggs is that they have great pacing. They flow in such a way that feels fluid and allows the player to keep pushing forward and not be stuck with things beyond their control. Even the longest Easter eggs can be made to feel fast, and in many cases are faster than they appear on paper. I'll be bringing to the table many examples of pacing from across the spectrum of execution. My examples are going to stick to the Treyarch side as they are most relatable to players, so it'll be the easiest to make examples out of those maps as more players are familiar with the Treyarch side. I will also generally be referring to the solo experience as that is what I am most familiar with. It is much easier to point out when pacing is poor because it stands out and makes itself known, but I have examples from both sides to make this work. I'm going to start more surface level and breeze through some examples, and then at the end I will dive deeper into my main 3 examples. These 3 are a collection where one has bad pacing, one is mixed, and the last one has great pacing. I want to be clear that good pacing is not the only thing that makes a good Easter egg, but it works in the shadows to enhance the experience with most players not even realizing it. When an Easter egg is well paced, the player could be doing that Easter egg for a few hours, and time will fly by. When it's poorly paced, it may feel like it's taken days to complete something that only took an hour or 2. One last important note for this introduction applies to Black Ops 3 and newer games with gobblegums or elixirs. I am discussing these Easter eggs as a player not using those, as it shows the true design of the Easter egg underneath. There are 2 exceptions to this. I will discuss Zetsubou No Shima later, and that one requires a gobblegum, but it's a classic and it's easy to obtain, which means it doesn't negatively impact the pacing of the Easter egg. I just want to get that one out of the way before anyone comments saying, hey, that's got a gobblegum in it that you have to use. I know. The other exception will come with my main examples near the end of the video, because I am going to use speedrun times to make a point there, and those times are posted with classics only. There isn't a no gobblegum option for the maps I'm discussing. Considering that the classics don't do much to help the player and are accessible to all, I am satisfied with the notion that they don't break the Easter eggs pacing like megas do. Before I can get into the specifics of any map or its Easter egg, I need to explain what I mean when I'm talking about pacing. In storytelling, it relates to how well the story flows and meaningfully pushes forward. How much of your time as a story is spent driving the narrative forward. Move too quickly and there isn't much of a story, or people may be confused. Move too slowly and people will lose interest or get frustrated by the story not going anywhere. These principles apply to an Easter egg as well, and are a difficult aspect to manage when creating an Easter egg for a map. You need to have more than one step to make an Easter egg, so how well can you make these sequential steps merge together into a cohesive quest? The goal is to make an Easter egg that can be long and complex while continually moving forward and allowing the player to experience it as quickly or slowly as they desire. The biggest issue comes when the only option is to do an Easter egg slowly because there are too many roadblocks in the way. Good things to do is to allow players to chain steps together as much as they want, or allow parts of one step to be done while the player is accomplishing another step. A major problem comes in when there are repeated moments of forced round progression. I'm not talking about the start of the match here. Of course, when you start the match, you have to get some points, open the map, get some basic gear, and then you'll be able to start the Easter egg. Once you start the Easter egg, then it should be able to keep going forward without forcing the player to stop or wait around for things too long. Giving players control and agency over how their Easter egg run goes is important and something I harp on. So much goes into making a well-paced Easter egg, and it has many instances of tying directly into the map design itself and how much that helps or hinders the player. That will be another aspect that will be brought up a few times. I think I've set the stage well enough, and now I have to make this make sense in practice, so let's jump into our first example map. And our first example map is Revelations of Black Ops 3. I'm starting us off with a bad example because this one is easy to grasp and has one main issue to it. This map's Easter egg is too dependent upon the box. And it doesn't help that the box on Revelations is absolutely flooded with weapons, more than any of the other maps. You certainly need the Apothecon Servant and Little Arnie's, and you will likely find yourself spinning the box for other weapons as well. If you only go for the things you absolutely need, there will still be many instances where you're simply stuck and can't progress the Easter egg until you get them. The worst case of this is with the Little Arnie's. They are needed on one of the earliest steps, which means you can do a few steps before you need them, but most of those steps are really related to opening the map. Even if you're lucky and you pull them early, the step they're needed for requires more than the player is given. Inside the Apothecon with Pack-a-Punch, the player has to throw an Arnie down 9 different holes. Only having 3 Arnies means you're stuck waiting for max ammos until you're allowed to move forward to refresh your ammo supply for Arnies. This one step does a ton of damage to the overall Easter egg, and it isn't the only box-dependent issue. It is the worst one on this map, however. The Apothecon Servant is also required, but a little later, meaning you have some more time to get it. The most unfortunate part of this Easter egg is that you seem to spend as much time at the mystery box as you spend time doing anything productive. So for pacing, this map can kill it early, and you may be stuck for a long time waiting and hoping you can do the Easter egg. You're just spinning the box otherwise. Sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're very unlucky. I recently did a run on Revelations. When I was doing the Easter egg, I was stuck waiting to get Little Arnie's, and I didn't get them until the 20s. I wasted so much time not getting anything done because I literally couldn't. I was also using Gobblegums in that instance, trying to speed it up, and I still wasn't getting anywhere. Having it be completely possible that someone gets stuck waiting for 5, 10, 15, 20 plus rounds is a poor design for the pacing of an Easter egg. This is where you would want to allow players a way to force Little Arnie's to become available to them. As it stands, Revelations is a poorly paced Easter egg, and it can lead to a lot of frustration when doing the map. Our next example is of a mixed quality pacing in the map Moon. This will be similar to Revelations, but redeems itself enough to be in the mixed category for a few small reasons. Here again, you'll find yourself chained to the RNG of the box. It can either save you or drag your run down. The small differences that help this map are that there is less in the box overall, and the items you need come a little later in the Easter egg, meaning you have more time to acquire them. This is where a co-op run can really help this map specifically, because you need QEDs and Gershes, but one person can't have both at the same time. Meaning, the solo experience can be tough if the box is not favorable. You first need a Gersh device. If you got that first, then great, you have what you need. If you got QEDs first though, you will have to get rid of them for the Gersh device, and then do that step, which you then have to pull the QEDs again right after to get along with the Easter egg. This can put a real damper on a good run and slow you down for a while. It is only slightly better than Revelations in this aspect because you have more time to get ready and the box is less diluted. Making this Easter egg be one or the other for equipment, or still needing the steps to have 2 separate items but then allowing the player to hold both at once, would help this Easter egg's pacing a lot. I have another example of a mixed quality pacing Easter egg with Firebase Z. If this Easter egg had many more steps to it, it would easily be in the bad category. But this is an instance where a map having a short Easter egg saves it because it does have poor pacing, and making the Easter egg have more steps would make it awful. As it stands, it can be done quickly because it's short, though at times it does not feel that way. So let's talk about how this works. This Easter egg has 2 main issues standing in its way: dialogue and the mimic step. First, we have dialogue. There are many moments during this Easter egg where the player can't do anything because they have to listen to an NPC babble on about some random bullshit and are unable to progress until that NPC is done telling you their life story. When you want to keep moving forward, but the only option is to sit there and listen to Peck, well, that isn't enjoyable, and it slows down the experience. The other issue here is the mimic capture step. This is a step that is well known for being anti-fun. You have to capture 3 mimics, and you're immediately off to a bad start when it's known you have to progress rounds between each mimic. So you set off for the first one by grabbing your capture device and seeking out the mimic. You fan through the map and find your guy. You weaken him. You capture him. You return the device back to the machine you pulled it from. It analyzes. All good. And now you have to progress the round to go again. While this doesn't sound bad, there is a lot of downtime where you're clearing rounds and then searching for the mimic to run all the way back to where you started to reset the cycle and start again. Firebase Z is not a massive map, otherwise this step could have quickly made Firebase Z fall into the bad category as well. Why this remains in mixed is as I mentioned before. It is an incredibly short Easter egg with not many steps to get to completion. Even though the 2 parts we talked about do slow the pacing of this Easter egg down to a halt, it doesn't kill the Easter egg because overall you won't spend a ton of time in the map, though it does feel that way, which is why it can't be said to have good pacing. The bad examples are worse and the good examples are better, which is why it lands in here with the middle. Let's talk about a good example of pacing. Eisendrache is a good example for good pacing. I will not call it great pacing, and I will explain why, but I wanted to be clear up front by saying that this is not the peak of pacing. That map we will discuss later. For now, we have Eisendrache, which delivers a fascinating Easter egg that moves very well aside from mainly one small blip. The start of this Easter egg is getting one of the bows upgraded, and through doing that, you'll be able to get decently set up. This means you can essentially work as quickly as you want if the map is open enough at this point. There is only one spot where this could be slightly improved, and it isn't honestly a big deal. There is one sequence of forcing round progression, and that is between the wisp steps. The first wisp step can be done whenever you upgrade your first bow, then there is a group of steps after that which can be done as rapidly as you like before the game forces you to progress around in order to activate the next wisp step. Forced round progression is not something I am a fan of, and I do dock this points from being great down to good on the pacing scale. The reason I am not harsher on this map's forced round progression is twofold. It happens only once, and there is so much you can get done between the wisp step before you have to progress that round. You can do the first wisp step, and then you can teleport to grab your items and a code. Then you place a fuse into the death ray and enter a code you got. Now that's opened the safe so you can go and grab the items from in there. Do as Simon says at the main computer and by the rocket test site, and then you can activate the death ray to shoot down the Dempsey capsule. All of that can be done, and then you'll have to progress the round. When you break up the round progression with plenty to do between, it is not nearly as bad, and in this case, it's hardly noticed as something that would even slow down your run. After this, you would go back to the Easter egg and do plenty zombie slaying before taking on the boss. This Easter egg allows itself to keep moving forward with hardly any moments that slow you down at all. What this means for Eisendrache is that while it has many steps, you can work through them quickly, meaning time flies by and creates an enjoyable experience. It's good pacing that you wouldn't normally think about, but when you look at it in this lens, you see how helpful it can be for an experience. That covers my basic examples. Of course, I could have gone through pretty much every map if I wanted to, but I don't need this video to be incredibly long. I got my point across. Now we're going to talk more detailed about the next 3 maps. One that's bad, one that's good, and one that's mixed. My first of the main examples is Blood of the Dead, and it is filling the slot of the bad pacing. I'm sorry for those who like or love this map. It gets picked on this channel, but here I am using it as a constructive example for poor Easter egg pacing. This does not mean it's a bad map, but its Easter egg is pretty bad, and that's the focus of it being in the bad section of this video. All of that out of the way, let's discuss this Easter egg and its flaws. Now that we are in the main examples, we are going to go deeper, so let's speed through all of the steps to this Easter egg and then talk about the specific spots that there are issues. For this Easter egg, you've got 2 steps which I call prerequisites. You got get the pack-a-punch, and then you get yourself the Hell's Retriever and spoon. Then for the actual steps, you have to use the spoon to scratch the warden wall, get a warden to die there with the monkey bomb. Enter the secret room, grab an orb, activate the switch. Place the orb on the map and spawn, which is a long trip from the warden to spawn. Activate the Chronorium to spawn the bird. Use your shield to blast the bird in 4 locations. Use zombie blood to find the final bird and use Hell's Retriever to drop the Chronorium, then collect the Chronorium. Give the Chronorium to Warden, enter code into dial. Track Lighthouse Light to challenge the location, activate with Shield Blast. do the challenge, and take the orb to the map and spawn. Run back to the warden, get a new code, enter code into the dial again. You will have to repeat this process for 5 challenges. Morse code at the docks, power room Simon Says and symbol translation, ghost escort, eliminate ghost with shield drain, and the shower soul collection. Then you've got the boss fight. You can absolutely count the challenges as all separate steps, but for clarity and not repeating myself multiple times for all of them, I went with condensing that into repeat these steps but for these 5 different challenges. This Easter egg isn't really that long on paper. I was actually surprised when writing it out that there weren't as many steps to write down. The problem is how these steps work and are laid out in-game being ridiculous. Between many steps, you're running fully across the map just to activate something and run all the way back to where you were before. The bird step has you all over the map looking for birds, and you have to do this 4 times. But you can only do 1 per round, meaning this step takes quite some time to complete. For such a simple step, they made it annoying because of how much time you spend on the run and having to progress rounds just to then run around the whole map looking for a new random bird spot. In this instance, do one of 2 things or both. 1, make it so all birds can be grabbed within 1 round. 2, make it so that there are less spawn locations for the bird, meaning less time is spent wandering around because the player has a much better gauge of where to expect the bird. Then you have the challenges. Every time you start a trial, you go to the warden, then to the base of the lighthouse to enter the code. Then you run to wherever the trial is. You do the trial, and in the case of the Simon Says, you are again running across the map to do that one. The other trials are good for staying in one location or a similar area. After completing your trial, you then have an orb that you take across the map to spawn, to then head back across the map to the warden to start this process again, where you get a new code to go to the lighthouse to track down the challenge, etc., etc. You have to do this 5 times, which gets annoying quickly. There is so much time wasted in this Easter egg that it becomes an annoying, tedious adventure before it becomes fun. Something that could have helped both of the Easter egg pacing issues would be to reduce the size of this map. This is a large map, but not only is it large, it doesn't really flow that well either. The fast travels available are okay, but often aren't largely useful. Shrink the map or add better and more numerous fast travels and your Easter egg pacing could be helped massively. All of this is targeted at the Easter egg again to clarify. If you're just surviving on this map and not doing the Easter egg, it's a decent map for that. The story is quite interesting as well. This Easter egg just gets in the way of that. We will come back again to Blood after talking about my other 2 main examples to bring this full circle, but for now, let's move on. Our main example for mixed quality is Zetsubou No Shima. As with Blood, let's run through the steps and then discuss. This one's got a lot of what I'm going to call prerequisites. You need Anywhere But Here equipped. You need to get Pack-a-Punch, build the shield, get the Skull of Nansapwe, KT4, and the gas mask. Then you can move on to the real steps. The steps are 1. Complete your 3 trials. Then use the skull to reveal a picture and open secret room. Get an artillery shell. Use the artillery shell to shoot down plane, collect that cog. Eliminate spider boss, collect tooth. Anywhere But Here to the secret room, collect that cog. Get electric shield, bash zipline and drop off zipline, collect cog. Place 3 cogs on the elevator. Upgrade the KT4 to the Masamune. Fight the boss. At first glance, it looks like Zetsubou may have a lot of steps, but don't be fooled. Running down the list, Anywhere But Here, Pack-a-Punch, the shield, KT4, the gas mask, the skull reveal step, shooting down the plane, the spider boss, the electric shield bash step, placing the 3 cogs in the elevator, all of those steps are easy to do or basically happen as you do other things. So 10 of the 15 steps are simple and fast. Getting the Skull of Nansapwe is not hard, but takes a little more time and attention, so I don't include it with those other 10, however it's a close call. That leaves us with really 3 main steps that cause issues. The trials, getting the artillery shell, and upgrading the KT4 to the Masamune. The trials can be mostly negated if you restart until you get favorable ones. However, you're still forced to do things you wouldn't normally do, and some of them slow you down. So the artillery shell and the KT4 upgrade are all that's left. These share the exact same issue in that they are dealing with forced round progression. The artillery shell, you can run a few blue plants at once and water them each round to increase your odds of getting the shell after one cycle of growth. This one isn't difficult, you just keep pushing rounds and don't forget to water your plants one round. The issue is not difficulty, it's that you're forced to progress the rounds, and on this step you have to do it 3 times. But that isn't the only time you're made to progress 3 rounds to grow a plant during this Easter egg. The Masamune step, growing your underground plant, it's pretty ass. You have to travel all the way underwater to your plant through an underwater cave and give it the special rainbow water. Then you make your way out. Naturally, doing this in round will be a death sentence, so you're going to save a zombie at the end of the round. Make sure you don't accidentally take it out, or you'll have to restart the step because you missed a round of watering. Those 3 rounds you save a zombie and then swim in and do your thing to then redo the exact same thing twice more over. See, it isn't difficult, but it does absolutely slow down the player, and it is outside of their control. They have to take this path, they have to water it every round, they have to follow this pattern. The reason this ends up in mixed is that the slowdowns are less frequent and everything around them moves quickly, which means that this is still a fast Easter egg, just a fast Easter egg that is laced with slowdowns. Again, like Blood, keep this all in mind. We're going to come back to those 2 maps after we talk about our great example. This is our last main example, and it's also another one from Black Ops 4 with Dead of the Night. It took me some time to come to grips with liking this map. I tried to refute it for a long time, and I think a big part of that was my intimidation with this Easter egg. When you look at it, it's a massive list of things to do, but it turns out that it's paced incredibly well, which makes it feel easier to do and more enjoyable. I'll explain all of that why. First, of course, let's look at these steps. You again will have prerequisites, as I'm calling them. You've got the Pack-a-Punch and building the shield for this one. Your full steps go like this. Get the Sentinel artifact. Craft silver bullets. Eliminate werewolf with silver bullets. Gaze into the crystals again. Ignite light for Atlas puzzle. Solve the Atlas puzzle. Find zodiac symbols and scratch marks. Solve zodiac puzzle and enter code. Electrify shield and activate telescope. Get chaos theory. Use chaos theory to eliminate vampires to get bile. Use the bile to summon boss vampire and eliminate it. Complete lantern challenge. Kill bat with chaos theory. Use chaos theory to make zombie dig up part. Get Alistair's annihilator. Collect 5 tree branches. Have appropriate players sacrifice themselves at the location the branch is collected. Escort Ghost to the cemetery and collect slab with a lockdown. Collect fire trap enhancements and activate fireplaces with fire shield from enhanced trap. Grab your gems. Use the gems to spawn knights and collect souls. Eliminate werewolf in the night triangle. Collect remaining slabs with any lockdowns you haven't completed. Go to the boss fight. Well, that is a lot of steps and many things to do. So how can this be a well-paced Easter egg? The key is that Treyarch does not force you to stop. You'll always be able to work on something and move forward if you want to. Have you ever had a day at work absolutely fly by? If you have, I bet it's because you were busy beyond belief. When we are putting our heads down and getting to work, we can get lost in that and things move quickly. This is what Dead of the Night does so well. There are many moments where rounds will be progressing, but not because you have to progress rounds. It's because you're doing something. There are many cases of needing to eliminate specific enemies, and that will move rounds. There are also many cases of defense or soul box collection moments where you're doing an Easter egg step, which just so happens to progress rounds too. This helps keep things moving forward, but also you can continually farm points to gear up while doing the Easter egg. You are being efficient and you don't have to go out of your way to do so. Do the Easter egg and you will become geared up as you go along. The way you can jump step to step feels so good in this map, and I love this Easter egg for it. This Easter egg has become one of my favorites of all time, and I applaud Treyarch for this. Now, if only this map had a whiff of marketing, maybe more people would know about this. I've covered the feeling of this map's Easter egg and all of the ones that came before it. But now let's look at the numbers for this, and I've got speedruns to make that happen. We're going to relate the feeling to actual numbers to make it a bit more clear for everyone. Talking about the steps and how it feels in the moment is all well and good, but why don't we add some solid numbers to this to further explain how pacing actually affects an Easter egg in practice. I'm going to use speedrunners here as my examples. I know they are not the majority of players, but they are the best way to get consistent results that we can draw conclusions from. If we compared my time to a new player or my time to a speedrunner, it wouldn't be close. The reason I want to use speedrunners is because they are the best at their respective maps. They have found all of the ways to minimize their times as much as possible. If there is a way to increase speed, they are working to find it and perfect it. We are comparing the best Blood of the Dead, Zetsubou No Shima, and Dead of the Night speedruns to show how pacing can actually translate into a clear numeric result. For the runs, I went with solo players, classic gobblegums only, like I said at the start of the video. Classics are available to all, and the lowest category of speedrun being tracked. I went in and just took the fastest solo time from each of these maps, and they will show how pacing translates to results. A quick recap of the Easter eggs. I'm going to put the Easter egg steps for each map on screen now, and we will start to add the best speedrun times in to show the differences. Let's put our first time up with Zetsubou No Shima. As of recording the video, the best time is a 25-minute, 34-second run. Now let's add in Dead of the Night. The best current run is a 26-minute, 30-second run. Already, we can see a massive difference between how much you need to do and the resulting time. If Zetsubou was more well-paced, it would have a much better time and be way ahead of Dead of the Night. But it all comes down to how you're able to complete these Easter eggs. When you aren't being stopped all the time, you can get a large list of tasks done quickly. Now it's time for the big one, Blood of the Dead. The best current run is a 44-minute, 35-second time. This is where it is most evident what pacing can do to an Easter egg. The steps are a similar amount between Blood of the Dead and Dead of the Night, with Dead of the Night arguably having more steps. And even with that, the time for Blood is nearly twice as long. The best people at running these can only get Blood's time down so far. There are too many spots that slow you down with forced round progression or steps leading you on running simulators through the whole map multiple times. This is not me saying that an Easter egg needs to be speedrunnable to be good. I am just using these times as a clear bit of evidence that is empirical over just the feeling that we had been discussing before. An Easter egg doesn't need to be perfectly paced to be good. And just because it's poorly paced doesn't always mean it's going to be a bad Easter egg. However, it can have a large impact on the perception of said Easter egg. If players hop into Blood of the Dead as their first Easter egg, they're likely going to get frustrated quickly. It is a tough Easter egg, and beyond that, it's a drag to complete, even for me, and I'm a veteran zombies player at this point. Give them an Easter egg that is either actually shorter in how many steps it has, or has great pacing, and it will help that experience flow along and feel more satisfying. I chose to go with displaying speedrun times for these 3 maps and diving into them deeper because I feel they are some of, if not the best examples of pacing in their respective categories of execution with good, mixed, and bad. I have delivered my thoughts on the pacing of Easter eggs, and while maybe people won't agree, I do believe that this is a pretty clear-cut case of good pacing, bad pacing, mixed pacing, and how that affects the gameplay you're experiencing. Doing Easter eggs has been my bread and butter in zombies for a long time. It is usually where I draw the most enjoyment from. I found myself contemplating this concept of pacing after going back to play every map in the series for a full series ranking video that I made. I thought about why I felt the way I did towards certain Easter eggs, and I found that many times my answer came back to the pacing. I don't want to feel as if my time is being wasted when I'm playing. I expect it to take time to complete an Easter egg, don't get me wrong, but when the developers do a good job of making steps move smoothly, it is appreciated. There are of course many things that make a great or bad zombies Easter egg, but pacing is a common through line that can absolutely make or break an Easter egg, even if players don't notice it in the moment. Let me know what Easter eggs you see as well or poorly paced in the comment section down below. I look forward to see those discussions, and I am hoping that DLC 1 for Black Ops 6 can deliver a great Easter egg coming soon. That's all I've got for today. Farewell, until next time.